I considered starting this video with a round of laughter, but that felt inappropriate. I felt a better tone to take would be mocking shame. But to be perfectly honest, can we really be that surprised that Manchester City lost to Al Hilal? This brings home everything that we have thought. Everything that we have come to understand about the Club World Cup, which is that everybody else cares about it a little bit, or maybe even a lot a bit more than Europe, and they're forcing these teams that are not used to these conditions to play in Orlando in June, which is just unfair. It just is. I mean, even though it was at night, 120 minutes outside in Orlando in June without running at all will be enough to make me want to take a nap. It would put me into a mild coma, like a nice 9-hour sleep where you don't wake up at any point. That's what that's capable of. It's like wearing a damp towel and then heating that up to 90 degrees, even at night. You're playing in a blanket of humidity. I mean, the coach, Inzaghi, for Al Hilal, the man was wearing a tracksuit and sweat through it. He had a collared shirt and a tracksuit over it and sweat all the way through it. Now, that obviously brings up the idea that if you are wearing multiple layers in Orlando in June, you should be arrested. You should probably be brought up on some sort of trial. I don't know exactly what that process would be, but that's a violation of the code of humanity. Like, if we're trying to identify the lizard people here, it would be the person that wears multiple layers in Orlando in June. You don't do that. If you're a normal functioning human being, it's like Westworld. They're starting to glitch out a little bit. But even if he's not a human being, he did manage to manage his team to a 4-3 win, which has now produced a pretty spectacularly interesting little table here, where there's only 5 of 8 European teams with a maximum of 3, not 4, 3 European teams in the semifinal, which is incredibly intriguing. Right? The Club World Cup, I still don't really care. Somebody did out me when I initially was like making fun of the Club World Cup, said you're going to make videos about it anyways, and I agreed. Right? Because let's be honest, the fuck else is there going on to talk about? I'm going to make a video about the Gold Cup or something, right? But there's some summer leagues going on in Colombia and stuff, right? Other places in South America, whatever. But there's not nearly as much going on as there usually is to trawl through. And so shout out to the Club World Cup for existing in what is essentially, even in American sports, a dead zone. The only American sport going is baseball, right? Of course, MLS is going as well, but that's disrupted heavily by the Gold Cup and the Club World Cup. And so here we are, right? And I'm paying attention. And the Al Hilal Manchester City game, as weird as it was, and as weird as it is to stomach the fact that Al Hilal managed to beat Manchester City 4-3, it was a fun game to watch. I know it's 2 oil teams, right? Man, I think it was Troll Football, right? It's some account that I follow, so I'm not going to take credit for this joke. But Al Hilal's Bane, right? And Manchester City is Batman. Okay, and Al Hilal, they were born in the oil. They were molded by it, right? Manchester City just adopted the oil, and that's what ended up making the difference here. Something like that, right? Hold on, I think you can hear my AC on the mic. So I'm going to turn it off, and I'm going to sweat this out with you. I just want you to really appreciate the fact that I turned off my AC, and it is the middle of the summer in New York, which is a hot, sweaty time to begin with. Anyways, it's off, and Al Hilal is on. And they're going to be playing against Fluminense in the next round, which means we all have to, collectively, get comfortable with the idea that there could be a Saudi team in the Club World Cup semifinal, which I realize it's the Club World Cup semifinal. How much stock is going to be put into it? If it happens, right? Whoever gets there, they're going to be pointing at it as a large marker of success. They are, particularly if it's Al Hilal, right? Because this is a project where they've basically just taken money and thrown it at a wall and brought in players. I mean, it was like spot that player that you forgot they didn't, you forgot they'd gone to Saudi Arabia when I was watching this match. Sergei Milinkovic-Savic, João Cancelo, Yassine Bounou, right? These guys were just popping out of the woodwork. But also, you start to recognize enough of those guys, even the captain, Mohamed Kano, who's like the feature guy in the Saudi national team, one of the very few at that high level in the Saudi national team, whose names I know. from having watched the last World Cup, having watched international football for a long time. This is a good team, right? You get enough of those guys that pop up on the team, and you have to acknowledge that a team like Al Hilal is actually just quite good. Better than a team like Inter Miami, and potentially better than these Brazilian teams that have been absolutely dusting it up with the big boys. Now, of course, we knew the Brazilian teams were good, but I think there has always been a debate about just how competent Brazilian teams, now, your one or two huge money Saudi teams, right? How competent those teams are compared to the best of the best. Well, now we're starting to get answers. Inter made the Champions League final. I realized they were probably trying harder in those games against Barcelona than they were trying against Fluminense. I realized that Fluminense probably had an environment advantage playing in their match, right? In their biome, basically, in their heat level. But Fluminense won in a knockout setting. And as piddly as the Club World Cup may be, it's not the Audi Cup either. This is an actual tournament that some players on all of these teams are excited to play in. And I talked to, while I was at that Mamelodi Sundowns Ulsan Park game with a member of the family of one of the players who said that the player made the move to the club to play in this Club World Cup. This is an opportunity to get onto this big stage. And it is, especially as it continues to progress through these knockouts, the stage is going to get bigger and bigger. And European teams are losing. Now, obviously, there are a ton of countries in Europe. There are a ton of clubs in Europe. And Europe is still producing the very best teams. I don't think anybody's touching PSG with a 10-foot pole in this tournament. They had Inter Miami in the ground by halftime. Inter Miami is not even the best team in MLS, right? They had messied their way to the knockouts, as one does. But PSG just seems to be on a completely different level. Real Madrid might get in their way. There's this whole European side of the draw, right? Real Madrid and Dortmund and PSG and Bayern Munich, right? You could get a Der Klassiker in the semifinal, which would be super interesting too. And then there's the fun side, the vibe side, where you get a Brazilian showdown in the semifinal, where you could get Chelsea against Al Hilal. I'm pretty sure Chelsea sold them half their players, right? There's so many weird and fanciful combinations, but I have one takeaway. Like, all of this is leading to one point. Watching that match between Al Hilal and Manchester City, I watched the second half, I watched the extra time. Fabulous game. Insane game. Europe is not that much better than I thought. That's the truth. I mean, Porto, Benfica, Salzburg, that's one thing. Right? That's one thing. But to get into the knockouts and have a team like Inter lose, right? To get into the knockouts and have a team like Borussia Dortmund struggle to put away a team like Monterrey from Mexico. I mean, I listed the advantages that these teams have in coming into this, trying to cause problems. But as much as I wanted to start this video making fun of Manchester City, I think we have a slightly new understanding. That if you took Al Hilal, that if you took Fluminense, if you took Palmeiras, and you put them in the Prem, I'm probably picking them not to get relegated. I mean, it's impossible, and we're never going to know the answer, right? There's good arguments to be made on both sides. I'm just talking about my personal opinion, like how much I've personally been swayed by the performance of non-European teams in this tournament. I mean, the Brazilian league is a roller coaster, right? You win it, and then you're 16th the next year. So who knows where these teams will even be 6 months from now. You can't just pick a horse like Barcelona and they're always going to be great, right? Even Santos, the great Santos, got relegated recently. Anybody is, liable to get blasted in the Brazilian league. It happens. But if you take the top teams in any given year in the Brazilian league and put them up against mid-table Premier League teams, right? Premier League being the deepest, richest league, I think those Brazilian teams have a good chance of walking out of there with the win. We really think that Brighton would show up at this tournament best on best and be able to handle Palmeiras the way they've been playing and be able to handle Fluminense. I mean, did they beat Manchester City? They might have. Brighton capable of some weird stuff. But go into a cup match, even if it's a League Cup match or something, and beat Manchester City. I mean, it doesn't happen a lot. It happens a hell of a lot more than it used to. But these teams are now starting to cross the Rubicon in my mind. It's a nice little history reference. That there is less of a gap. And in fact, unless you are one of the top couple European teams, there's not much of a gap at all. The PSGs, your Bayerns, your Barcelonas, your Real Madrids, they're still gonna create some separation. Right? But even to Inter, or Juve, or Dortmund, or somebody like Leverkusen, it is far from a sure thing. I don't know necessarily what forces have caused that. I don't know if it's always been that way. I don't know if it just changed. Obviously, in Saudi Arabia, it totally just changed, and we all know why. But this Al Hilal win forces a reckoning. And the more progress, like say Palmeiras beats Chelsea, the more progress these teams make, the more it forces that reckoning. And I'm going to take this one step further. I think it's going to add something. I think players that are over the age of 22, 23 that play for these teams are going to start making moves to Europe. Because if I am a relegation-threatened Premier League team and I see somebody like Jonathan Arias, who is not in the age profile that these teams are normally looking for, which is, 17 to 22 that you can bring over and they have this tremendous resale value, screw that. Go get these good players. Obviously, you're not getting them from Al Hilal, but these Brazilian teams, right? Even a team like Monterrey, go find these guys. And they can help you. They're playing against bigger teams than you're playing against the vast majority of the time, and they're holding their own. And they're in a league all the way over there where it's going to be a hell of a lot easier to get them. Obviously, the wages in Brazil, the wages in Mexico, the two examples I used, they're not super cheap, but compared to the wages in the top 4 or 5 leagues, they're gettable and cheaper. I think maybe one of the lasting legacies of this tournament is that every 4 years we're going to get a wave of guys that move to the biggest money leagues because they show that they have the quality to they have the quality to help you beat Inter, which would be useful for everybody that's not Napoli in Italy. I'm just trying to digest this. All of this, I still don't know if I really care, but I'm definitely going to pay attention, and I'm probably going to watch a few more matches.